With 4 updates to Star Citizen coming every year, one of them needs to be the biggest. This year, that update is 3.18. And while we're all waiting in anticipation for the mammoth 4.0 patch next year, 3.18 is looking to make some monumental changes to the game in preparation, and has a surprising amount of additional content. Nothing here is confirmed for the patch, so it's possible we might not see all of this year. Regardless, this is your 3.18 feature preview. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. Throughout 2022, the team behind Star Citizen has finally been able to start making good use of the tools they've been working on. This has led to our first river, new shipwrecks to explore, aged derelict ships to get into firefights at, old ruins with pirates calling them home, and improvements in the cities and space stations. The new locations continue with 3.18, with a combined 600i and Mercury Starrunner derelict settlement. This means the location will include puzzles, traversal mechanics, missions, and hostile NPCs. These activities will likely be similar to what we have seen at the ruins and derelicts added this year already, but with the addition of habitation pods built into the settlement, and some new scenery on the moon of Daymar. Not a monumental change, but a good sign showing consistency in the new additions throughout this year from the locations teams. The next new location scheduled for Alpha 3.18 is a new cave type. For years, no matter what planet or moon you were on, you'd find the cave biome looking the same. After a few small interesting changes to the proof of concept caves we had before, we're finally seeing the first actual biome addition to the cave system: sand caves. These caves are designed a bit differently, with more intricate structures and sunlight pouring through the ceiling to bring a new atmosphere to the subterranean locations. The description of this feature, though, doesn't provide any insight into whether the overall cave system is seeing an upgrade, old glitches are at all being remedied, or the new caves will bring anything different in gameplay. So it's safe to say, as of the time of this video, that this will likely just be a change of scenery for cave divers. The third location change in 3.18 is the expansion of the river creation system. We have recently seen how the river placement tool, which took about 15 months to produce our first river, has been iterated on over the summer of 2022. It now allows for a full river system to be generated and implemented across a planet's surface, based on a myriad of variables and criteria under the designer's discretion. This means we're expecting to see systems and networks of rivers across Hurston and Microtech in the 3.18 update. This, again, is an expansion of an existing system, and will likely not bring any new gameplay with it, but this continues the trend of maturing these tools for the future of planet and location generation, and polishing the Stanton system, filling this first star system with more interesting locations and atmospheres. While being one of the biggest gameplay additions of 3.18, the cargo refactor is also likely the most unknown potential addition. It has been touted for quite some time as being scheduled for this year, and more recently for 3.18. But we know how predictions work with Star Citizen. They don't. So take this one with a javelin-sized piece of salt, but the cargo refactor aims to physicalize all cargo in the game. What this means is the cargo you buy from a console, the cargo you pick up for a courier mission, and that cargo you stole from the ship you blew up will all function the same way. They will all be able to be snapped into your cargo grid, and they will all be stealable by those more scummy than you, cause you'd never do that, right? This refactor is likely only the beginning of a long line of updates to how cargo works, how we interact with it and load our ships, and the overall functionality of cargo hauling and trading. Something else not specifically mentioned but perfectly timed and situated to join this update is the kiosk system update. This will also add cargo loading timers to shops and kiosks, informing you of how long it will take your orders to reach your ship. This is meant to balance the commitment of using large ships over smaller, more cargo-focused ships, and will eventually expand into NPCs loading your ship for you, unless you'd like to save the money and do it yourself. We all know prisons are bad news in Star Citizen. Well, the criminals among us do. I'm, of course, immune from such a lowly location. But if you do bad things, and sometimes even if you don't, you can end up in a prison where you have a sentence to serve. but by doing good deeds in prison like mining valuables for the owning company or other forms of slave labor like that, you can get out of prison faster. Those other forms of labor are so non-existent though that I couldn't list any while writing this down other than refilling oxygen supplies. So in 3.18, we are expecting to see some new missions and sandbox activities that will help players gain smaller sentencing or even escape. In the long run, the prison system is going to be a key part of making criminal activity in the game higher risk. There's no knowing if it will actually work, but in the short run, new improvements to the gameplay in this location will be appreciated. Security Post Korea is one of the oldest landmarks in the game, and in 3.18 it is planned to get a huge update bringing an active security team from Crusader online to protect the station, and limiting access to all civilians. If you don't know what this location is, you've probably never been in a position where you need to remove your criminality rating, but this is one of the key places criminals need to go to clear their record. With a security team and active restrictions, that will be made much harder, and turn this location into a new hotspot of conflict even more so than before. What we don't know yet is whether your reputation with Crusader or the Bounty Hunting Guild will grant you access. This is unlikely, but there's a good chance we can expect such possibilities in the future. After the new dynamic event in Orison spawned new areas around the floating city, the team decided those areas would be a waste when the event wasn't running. So the mission team took it on themselves to utilize the areas for additional FPS missions and activities, probably similar to what we complete in bunkers and at outpost locations. Like these other updates, this is similar content in new locations, which is nothing to write home about. But like the other locations, this is clear proof that the development around these aspects of the game have changed in 2021 and 2022, after years of almost no new activities or locations to speak of. And when those few locations were added, they oftentimes had no use. These new platforms are coming with new missions, and will eventually be located around the planet of Crusader with additional missions to take the place of the bunkers and buildings we can visit on planets with a habitable surface. Veterans know interdictions can be a touchy subject if not handled correctly, which is why they have not been very prominent over the years. But CIG feels that in 3.18 they're ready to experiment with them once more. We might be seeing new variations in difficulty levels on the occasion we get pulled out of quantum travel by a hostile force. This could be asteroids, pirates and haulers, or other situations. I don't know if these events will be driven by the quantum simulation system and probability volumes, but if it does, we'll probably start to see certain routes regarded with more scrutiny and caution from the cargo haulers and the miners of our community. It will also be interesting to see how this works with the new upcoming quantum travel system that's being redone. New space stations and scenarios are also scheduled for the upcoming patch, with these missions definitely making use of probability volumes. We don't know what these missions entail, but this will be the first prominent example of the probability volumes in use, in my opinion. These missions will be the beginning of randomly generated quick encounters we could happen upon in space for years to come, and will likely come with plenty of glitches and instability, but it is a good start for dynamic missions. Finally in gameplay, we have hull stripping, the first version of Salvage, which will be accessible to the Reclaimer, the new Vulture, and the multi-tool attachment. Hopefully we get the dedicated salvaging tool as well, but we'll have to wait for a future Inside Star Citizen to be sure. For more info on what to expect from this edition of Salvage and Salvage in the long term, I made a video you can find in the video description. In terms of underlying tech, besides bug fixes, there are some pretty monumental things planned for 3.18. First is Persistent Entity Streaming, or PES. This technology will allow every object in the game to always have its location and state recorded and persistent. So no matter what happens, a server crash, a computer crash, a player logout, the objects that have been left in the verse will stay where they are. We have no idea if this will last hours, days, or weeks in this first iteration, but it's the first step to making sure the game is always alive and always affected by us. This means crashed ships will stick around to be salvaged, resource deposits will be waiting for you when you return for more, trash will pile up in Hurston, and your org can easily maintain a permanent base of operations if they please. This is the single biggest hurdle to getting server meshing working next year, and has been the massive endeavor of dozens of devs over years to make this technology work. This is a huge step towards the final goal of Star Citizen, and once it is added and stable, will bring some truly meaningful change to the game. It'll likely be buggy and will require much more testing before going live, but this feature is actually a big deal, and is the single most important addition coming in this update, if not the entire year. But don't let that overshadow the Gen 12 renderer. This renderer has also been in the works for years and is a massive part of optimizing the game to make it more playable for more people. Many people ask when the game will be optimized or be able to run higher than 30 frames per second. This could be their answer. It's not a for sure thing and could end up only bringing minimal improvements, but many players have already reported much better performance this year due to just the knock-on effects coming from the changes leading up to the Gen 12 renderer. I say that because this has been a gradual addition to the game ever since last year, but may possibly see a full implementation in 3.18, priming Star Citizen for things in the future like Vulkan API support, ray tracing, global illumination, higher resolutions, and eventually possibly virtual reality support. I'll go over this component in higher detail once we're closer to the update release. A surprising amount of content in a patch that already aims to completely change the underlying tech of the game. As I mentioned multiple times, these chunks of content aren't necessarily game-changing on their own, but they all aim to diversify an experience that up until last year was growing pretty stale. It's still pretty early to know exactly what will be included in this update for sure, but it's safe to say already that there will be a good amount of stuff to do. If you like these news and feature updates and want to learn more about how they are made along with the whole game, consider joining Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. My supporters receive exclusive videos every month that deep dive into the history and details of the development of Star Citizen. My latest video looks at the failure of the original hover mode feature and how it will be revamped for VTOL flight in the future using the heat system. And if you'd like to talk more casually about these things, feel free to jump into my live stream and ask some questions. And if you just enjoyed the video, I hope you were able to learn something new in this one. And I'll catch you in the next.